Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with crispy garlic breadcrumb chicken. That's right, there's nothing like a crispy fried chicken cutlet. So when I got a food wish for that recently, I was pretty excited. But then I remembered we'd already done a video for that. So I decided to try the impossible and do a baked version that was almost as good. And not only did this method help us avoid that messy breading station and big pan of splattering hot grease, I also think it produced a more flavorful product. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with one of my least favorite ingredients ever. And that would be the boneless, skinless chicken breast, which I almost never use because I really like skin. But believe it or not, this is one of the few recipes I know where the boneless, skinless chicken breast actually works better. And what we'll do is season those generously on both sides with a mixture of kosher salt, freshly ground black pepper, and of course a little touch of cayenne. And by the way, for some recipes it works better if you remove that little tenderloin, also called the fillet. But here I actually think it's going to work better if we leave those attached. And yes, those are kind of torn up, so whoever cut up this chicken might need to sharpen their knife. But anyway, like I said, we'll go ahead and season those on both sides. And then we'll head to the stove where we're going to sear these over high heat in about a tablespoon of olive oil. And we're going to want to start with the smoother side down. And that pan should be nice and hot when these go in. Alright, we want these to start sizzling and searing immediately. And once we have those placed in the pan, we're not going to touch them or do anything for exactly 2 minutes. Okay, just let them sear. And if you're one of these people that hears something like that and thinks to yourself, I could probably touch it a little. That's not going to be a problem, is it? Yes, it is, because it might be sticking and you could tear some flesh off. But if you don't touch it for a couple minutes, that crust will actually release from the pan, and we should be able to easily turn it over without incident. And then what we'll do is give that second side exactly 2 minutes before removing those from the pan onto a plate. And the reason we're only giving these a couple minutes is because most of the cooking is going to be done in the oven so that our garlicky breadcrumbs have enough time to really get nice and brown. So we do not want to cook them too much at this stage. And in addition to giving those breasts a little extra flavor by searing, we're also building up some beautiful flavor on the bottom of the pan where those chicken juices have now caramelized. And then what we'll do once our chicken's seared is turn our heat down to medium-low and add a nice big chunk of butter. And as soon as that melts or almost melts, we'll go ahead and dump in the star of the show, about a half cup of panko-style breadcrumbs, which are just like regular breadcrumbs, only way, way more awesome. And we'll cook this on medium-low for about 3 or 4 minutes, until those breadcrumbs just start to turn a little bit golden. And while you can do this with regular breadcrumbs, the panko style works so much better here because they're a much larger, much more jagged crumb, which is going to provide for a much crispier texture in the final product. And yes, you can make your own, and we will cover that a little bit in the blog post. But anyway, we'll cook those crumbs in that chicken-flavored butter for a few minutes, at which point we'll add the other star of the show, a whole bunch of crushed or finely minced garlic. And we'll stir that in and cook it for exactly 1 minute. Alright, we're basically just taking the raw edge off that garlic, since that's of course going to cook more when we place our chicken in the oven. And then what we'll do after we've cooked that stirring for 60 seconds is turn off the heat and add the last 2 ingredients, some finely and freshly chopped Italian parsley, as well as a couple tablespoons of grated fresh Parmigiano Reggiano, or what my American friends would call Parmesan cheese. And with the heat off, we'll go ahead and stir that in. And that is going to be it for our crispy garlic breadcrumb topping, which at this point is already crispy, but it's going to get even more crispy once baked. So what we'll do is just reserve that till needed, while we move on to make what I'm calling the glue. And all that is a spoon of mayonnaise, to which we're going to add a little splash of aged balsamic vinegar, as well as a spoon of some nice hot Dijon. And by the way, if you were planning on customizing this by sneaking in some exotic herbs and spices, this would be the place to do it. Okay, I was thinking something like hot smoked paprika or maybe some curry powder would be nice. So as usual, feel free to adapt this to your liking. I mean, you are after all the disco stew of your poulet glue. But enhanced or not, what we'll do is spread that over nice and evenly, mostly on the top surface. But we're definitely going to want to get some on the sides as well. And then once we have that stuff applied, we'll go ahead and spoon over our breadcrumbs, equally distributed over both breasts. And then once we have that piled down, we'll give it a little press with the back of our spoon, firmly but gently. And we're most concerned with the top surface area, but we will also attempt to apply a little bit to the sides as well. And then once those are set, we'll take a spatula and carefully transfer those back into our pan. And as we're doing that, we can try to get some of the loose crumbs on the plate to sort of stick onto the bottom, which I was only partially successful doing. But hey, I'm still glad I tried. And then what we'll do once those have been transferred back into the pan is pour in about a quarter cup of chicken broth. But be careful not to splash it over the top. All right, we don't want wet crumbs, but I did want that under the chicken to not only add moisture to the cooking process, but also to help prevent any crumbs on the bottom from burning. Since we're going to finish this by placing this into the center of a very hot 450-degree oven for about 10 to 12 minutes, or until our chicken is cooked through and our crispy garlic breadcrumbs are beautifully browned. And no, sorry, you don't get a fork scrape. I didn't want to mess up the tops. And then if we want, we can serve these immediately and simply spoon those pan drippings onto the plates. But what I'm going to do is let the chicken rest for a couple minutes while we make a very quick, very easy pan sauce, which we can do by splashing in a little extra chicken broth, as well as squeezing in the juice of 1 lemon. And we'll bring that back to the stove and place it over high heat. And please be very careful because that handle is really, really hot, which would be a super easy thing to forget. So while this pan sauce is easy, it's also very dangerous. So be sure to keep a towel in your hand and don't let go till you're done. And that's it. We will simply reduce those liquids by about half. And if we want, drizzle in a little more balsamic vinegar for a little extra touch of acidity. Plus, it's going to deepen that color just a little and make it look a little more like a chicken sauce. And other than checking it for seasoning, that pan sauce is done. And it is ready to spoon around our plated chicken. And you don't have to strain it, but I did, because it's going to look better. So we'll apply a few spoons of that around our beautiful breast, which in case you're wondering is sitting next to some hearts of romaine with a Korean dressing, which is just like Russian dressing, except it's Korean. I'm still working on that, but once I perfect it, I will share. But anyway, as the wise man once said, you don't make friends with salad. So let me grab a fork and knife and dig into this chicken. And as usual, I will start with the smallest, driest end, because if that piece is awesome, the thicker, moister parts in the middle are going to be even more awesome. And awesome it was. All right, the combination of those super crispy, garlicky crumbs and that moist, flavorful chicken really was fantastic. And speaking of texture, one thing I loved about this is the breadcrumbs took on 2 different textures. Okay, most of them were really crispy and crunchy, but some of them from around the sides, and the ones that had fallen into the sauce, had absorbed some of that delicious moisture and were very reminiscent of like a dressing or a stuffing. So I really did enjoy that contrast as well. It was sort of like eating a crispy fried chicken with a side of stuffing, which are never served together, but maybe should be. And above and beyond the incredible taste and texture, that nice thick layer of crispy garlic breadcrumbs really helped keep the meat from drying out, which is a very, very common problem with using boneless, skinless chicken breasts. But here that was absolutely not a problem. So I am really loving this technique for many reasons. But anyway, that's it. What we're calling crispy garlic breadcrumb chicken. While maybe not exactly the same as a fried breaded chicken cutlet, this technique really did provide for an amazingly similar experience, with less prep and way, way, way less of a mess. And now if you'll excuse me, I need to go and perfect that Korean dressing. But in the meantime, I really do hope you give this a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.